Hello, I am Moodida, and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is my 1.0 playthrough where I attempt to load balance every factory. Why? Because for some reason I find this fun. In the last video, I created 1080 concrete using the rubber concrete alt recipe. Today, I'm going to make 4800 iron ingots using the Basic Iron Ingot alt recipe. This is one of the new recipes that came with 1.0, and I really wanted to try it out. The great thing about this is the rates and the numbers that I get to deal with. So in total, I need 3,840 limestone with 2,400 iron ore, and that'll make 4,800 iron ingots. This does need 96 foundries, but thankfully I've got a few blueprints to deal with that. Let's go through the blueprints I'm going to be using. I'm going to come to my machines with no recipes, so these are all of the blueprints that I've made, and these are just kind of the broad outline. So we need the 6 foundries, and there's 2 copies, so we'll need to change both of them. But let's go ahead and get everything set. All the machines are going to be set to the basic iron ingot at 100%. Alright, so let's work our way backwards and make sure all the belts are correct. So I need 25 and 40. That means all of the belts and lifts going right into the foundries are fine being Mark 1, but both of these sections are going to need to be Mark 2. I normally do it where the more full belt is on the bottom, the less full belt is on top, so we'll do iron on the top, limestone on the bottom. This will be 120, this will be 75. So I need to make sure we change both of those, and the same underneath. So Mark 2, Mark 2, and Mark 2, and Mark 2. Which also means this section is going to need the same thing, so the connection into this splitter needs to be Mark 2. And then same thing with the next splitter. This one needs to be Mark 2. Each machine will output 50. So again, Mark 1 is fine for coming right out of the machines, but each floor will be outputting 150. So this needs to be Mark 3, and then so will this connection. That does it for the first half, so let's go ahead and save this. We can just, I know it's compact, everything's compact, so we'll just remove that with Basic Iron Ingot, if it fits. Perfect. With the A version customized, now I just need to do the same thing to the B version. And just like that, we customized both blueprints to fit this factory. Now let me show you the last one that I made to help it bring it all together. This has 2 splitters, and they're at the 3 and the 4th height. And then we just have the inputs right here. Making this lift and that connection really easy, but this way I don't have to mess around with getting it at that 1 level higher. This will all make sense when I bring it all together. But doing something like this can just save you a little bit of time and effort. Because we have 10 different hotbars to be able to use, I find it super helpful to just dedicate one to whatever factory I'm going to use. So for the time being, I'm going to have these on here, but tomorrow I may replace these with a whole bunch of different ones for whatever's relevant. Highly recommend it. Let's get it started. So I can't remember. Alright, so the easiest way, because we've got splitters and mergers and all sorts of stuff, is to look at the little arrows on the machines. So this is the output side, so I want to swap this around. And this is how much space I'm going to give myself. 2 foundations here in the front to be able to do any of the belt work for the inputs, and then I'm going to give myself a gap of 1 foundation in case I need to get any belts or something through there. So I think this is probably going to be a little bit too much space, but that's okay. I'd rather have a little bit too much than have to make things look super cramped when I run out. Now I can switch to A, and if I put it in blueprint mode, it'll snap right to where I want it. You can double check by locking it in place. Looks good. Alright, so now we go back to B, and then back to A. I had already measured it out. I've got my middle walkway right here. Since I need so many machines, I figure we'll put a little gap so that I can walk down the middle. Let's see, so I think this ended... Yeah, okay, so I gave myself one foundation of a gap. And that's perfect. Alright, so we'll just continue the pattern. B and then A. And that's half the machines right there. And I've got the same spacing on this side. So I left myself one foundation just in case I need to get any belts through here. And now I'm just going to mirror this on the other side. So instead of directly copying it, I want to kind of flip it around so that all of the outputs are facing in towards the middle. So that means we're going to go B first on this side. Alright, so now the spacing, these blueprints take up 3 and then a half foundations. So we have a half, and then we're going to go 2, and then we're going to go a half. And that will give me 3 full foundations, which is definitely more than I need. And this is really more because I like the way that this is going to look. I'm going to make sure we're even with this one. Perfect. All right. I think you're supposed to be able to nudge it 1 full foundation, but does this happen to any of you where you get to nudge it 7, but you can't get it that 8th one, so you can't nudge it 1 full foundation? Oh, it would have been nice. It's a little bit more work to do, but setting down 96 foundries was pretty quick. Now let's use this third blueprint. I can't use blueprint mode, but that's okay because it's going to line up right in the middle of these two, so it's going to be right on the split of the 2 foundations for all of these. And then I think I lined it up perfect. So yeah, I just want to line this up right on the edge, and then I believe that will put, yep, these splitters just in line with those. So let me put one in and show you how it works. So both of these need to be Mark IV, so both the lift and the belt. And the reason for it is both the A side and the B side have 6 foundries, and in total a set of 12 is going to need 300 iron ore and 480 limestone being plugged in. So we've got the 2 Mark IVs, but right after that first splitter we can go ahead and just switch to Mark III, because this will be 150 and the limestone will be 240. So we can just use Mark III for these. And that's how we're going to feed this whole thing. So let me place a few more of these. And I just need a couple belts. Alright, that was really pretty easy. One thing I need to remember to do is come through and connect all of these last power connections. Since each machine outputs 50 iron ingots, each blueprint is going to be outputting 300, which unfortunately means until I get Mark V belts, I can't combine these two, like how they're designed. But that's okay, that means I get to set up 16 belts with 16 sinks to get this all running. Sure, I could combine them so that I have full 480 belts, but I know I'm just going to split up most of this into future projects on future floors, and 300 is a really easy number to work with. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Once I get Mark V, maybe I'll revisit it and I can condense some things. Chances are, I probably won't. Let's be honest. But I'm basically just going to have these come out probably to like here. And then I'm just going to use the conveyor walls, probably a lot of the 3s, and we'll just get these going into that tunnel and off to where they need to go. But before we can get to that, we need to do some load balancing, because I need quite a few belts to plug into all of these. But before I do that, let me give myself somewhere to kind of aim for. And I think we'll go right here. So I want to go in the center. And I need a total of, I think it's 8 belts on this side and then that side. Because, let's see, we need 480, 480 for the limestone. So those will go on the bottom. And then I need 300 for the iron. And then now, in good old straight mode, I can just plug that into there. That one into there. We can drag these out to here. So let's see, we'll go back to here. So that they can be in the same spot. Perfect. Oh, almost, not quite. There and there. And there we go. So this part, nice and clean, super simple. This right here is going to be the outside wall. I think I'm going to cut off this very last one right here because I don't need that much space. Right now, because I kind of went back in time so I could show you building all of this, I don't have any of my underfloor set up or the belt buses really completed, so I'm going to jump back to where that's all done so that I can show you how the load balancing is going to go for this. And ta-da! We are pretty much all caught up and we've got walls. So I gave myself a handy little sign, so I need 4 480 belts of limestone and 4 300 belts of iron ore. And then if we turn around, I need the same thing for that side right there. So let me show you one thing before we get the belting started that I set up, because it is super helpful, and I'll put the comment on the screen real quick. Thank you so much for giving me the extra little push I needed to go ahead and make the packaged liquid biofuel. This stuff's amazing. I knew it was better because I have used it before in a previous playthrough, but I forgot just how much better it is, and it is pretty great. So I just made this temporary little setup to turn all of my solid biofuel into the packaged liquid form. So this container had all of my solid biofuel that came into this refinery. I wanted the most bang for my buck, so I went ahead and put some summer sloops in here so I could double the amount of liquid biofuel. And then I just underclocked it to 40 just so it would be running at the same rate as the packager. But since I summer slooped that, I needed the packager to run at 80. And then I just had this container feeding it with a bunch of the empty canisters I had sitting around. Those all went into here, and I've still got a good amount. So let's see if we use the dismantle tool. Still have over 2,000. So that should last me quite a while until I can get a more permanent fixture set up inside here. So really, I could delete everything except for the storage containers now, which is probably what I'll do soon. But let's get to some load balancing. Alright, so we're going to start with this side right here. I figure I'm going to use all of the iron and limestone out of this one, and then we'll move on to that one, and then that one, and then I think I'll still need to use some of the limestone from that very last one that I just brought in. So I'm not going to go through everything, because for some of this it's going to be really simple. I can come over to my little board here, and that one right there is a normal 300 iron, which is exactly what I need to plug in, so I can just take that one belt, run it all the way to one of the lifts. So you don't need to see a whole bunch of stuff like that. But if we look here, we can see that I pretty much only have 2 different amounts coming in. It's either going to be 300 or it's going to be a full 480 belt. So how do I deal with that? For the iron, when I only need 300, that means I need to shave off 180. 300 out of the 480, 0.625. In other words, I need 5/8. And then with the limestone, my issue is that I need the 480. So for the pure nodes, that's nice and easy. I can just belt those straight. But when I have just 300, then what do I do? So for this, I want to make things kind of easy, and I'm going to basically split one of them into 180 and 120 so that I can just take that 180 line, combine it with another 300 line, and that'll give me my 480. 180 out of the 300 is 0.6, so 60%, or 3/5. I'm actually a little surprised it let me put the blueprinter down. I can't even see the top of it, but that's okay. I just need the very bottom. So this right here will take a line and you plug it right here into the bottom one. And this is going to split it, and out is going to come, actually I forgot which order. So this is what's great about the description. So 3/8 is going to be the top merger, 5/8 is going to be the bottom merger. So I try to make it as compact as possible, so let me see if I can explain it. So you plug in 480, 240 goes here, 240 goes here. So this right here automatically has 4/8, right? So I just need to add 5/8. So this amount that came up into this merger gets split in half. So we've got basically 2/8 now that's going into here. And then the other 2/8 is going up to this top splitter. And that's getting split in half. So we've got half of it coming down to the bottom right here. So this is our 4 plus 1. This is our 5/8 coming out of here. And then the other 1/8 is coming down into here, mixing with the 2. And then we've got our 3. This will take a 480 line, and then it'll output a 300 and a 180. For the 2/5 and 3/5 split blueprint that I made 2 different versions, and they basically just kind of swap which output is on the top and which one's on the bottom. So let's just look at the A first. Pretty nice and compact. So since we're doing a 5-way split, we need to start with a merger, and you could input your amount from either the open inputs. We've got the merger leading into a splitter. This splitter needs to split it in half, so we've got 1/2 going here, the other half is going right here. That right here is going to be what ends up being the 3/5. So this right here, we need to use all 3 outputs, and this is the one that cycles back to the initial merger. We've got 1/5, and then on the other side, we've got the second. So that has 2/5, this has 3/5. And this one right here, we'll swap them around. So the 3/5 will end up on top, 2/5 down here at the bottom. Other than that, it's going to be really similar. We've got to start with the merger. That goes into the first splitter that splits it in half. We've got our 3/5 here. The top splitter is the one that sends part of it back into the original merger. And then we've just got our 2/5 here. And those blueprints are all I need to do my load balancing. Alright, so let me just run through a couple examples, but I won't make you watch all of this. To deal with the 480 of the pure iron, and I want to get that down to 300, this is where I'm going to need my 3/8 and 5/8. So we can go ahead and spin this around. Let's see, we'll move it back since we're going to need to use a lift to get that one in there. And get it nice and close, but no clipping. Alright. So now I can just grab my conveyor pole so that I can make my short little lift here. And plug that right in. Just in case I forget, since I put it in the description, we've got 3/8 on the top, 5/8 on the bottom. So now I can just grab a Mark IV belt and we can send this off into one of those lifts. Unless I have immediate plans for this 180 that I was going to work with, I would much rather take a display sign, and we're just going to say that I'm just going to say that there's 180 free here. And hopefully I won't forget. If I haven't used this by the time I finish this factory, what I'm going to do is just take a lift, and we're just going to send that downstairs, and I'll put a sink. This way everything can keep flowing the way it's supposed to. For the limestone, I need one of these blueprints, so I am going to pick the one that has the 3/5 on the top belt. And let's go ahead and get this lined up. The other one Okay, so for this I'm using these two belts, and obviously I'm going to need to do a little bit. I put these lifts in here because with the copper and the Caterium I'm not going to be using those right away. So the easiest thing is to just drop them down a level so that I can bring them out to somewhere else to deal with them as I'm trying to bring out a whole bunch of the iron and the limestone from here. So that means I need to work with these two, which would be this belt and this belt. So I'm going to go ahead and make old stubby here. Make sure it's marked 4, just like the other one. Alright, and so that one can plug in just like that. The other one, we'll see if we can do a straight connection. Alright, so I'm going to remove this belt, and then I'm going to take the merger, and I'm going to set it just like that. Does mean we need to remove that lift and replace it. Make sure it's the same Mark III. Perfect. And now we're going to take that second 300 line and plug it right into the side of that merger. So we took one of the 300s and we split it to 180, went up into that top merger. 120 is going out here. So again, I'm going to, probably should have put it in a better spot so I could actually see it. But right here we have 120 free. And this isn't iron, this is limestone. So I'll either have to sink it or send that off into one of the other load balancing. Limestone is going to be a little bit tight, so I'm not sure if I need to use that or not. But this is basically how I'm going to do all the load balancing. Either taking the 300 lines and combining them to make 480 for the limestone, or taking the 480 and turning it into a 300 for the iron. And then I just need to create some lifts down here and just connect the belts to the lifts. Alright, but nobody wants to watch all that belt work, so let's just skip ahead to where that's all done and we can go on this final tour before we get it all started. Okay, let's take a look. I definitely still have a hole on the outside to fix, and that's because this is actually the dead center of the entire factory. I didn't lay this thing out in a super symmetrical way. The main hallway that's leading to the storage that everything's kind of built around is because that's where it leads to the waterfall, instead of it being kind of dead center, which is what I think I normally would have done. But I don't really mind. It kind of switches things up for me. We've got all of the ore coming in down here. Besides the lighting, not a whole lot has changed in here except for all of the outputs. I didn't have room to put my towers like I did with the concrete setup because a lot of the floor is kind of taken up and there's not enough space here in the middle to put that large pillar. But this is the 16 belts of iron ingots headed off into that hallway, which I'll show you where that goes in a second. Nice and clean. And on this side, so we just jump out real quick, you can kind of see. This right here is the very center of the whole thing. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to close it up. Still trying to figure that stuff out. It's a work in progress. Alright, so let's take a look and see where all of these go. I tried to stack them up because I wanted to give myself a little bit of room. Obviously, I've still got all of this space up here that I can use. My original plan was as soon as the belts came out into this hallway, I was going to send them out that way. And I was going to have a whole bunch of sinks set up right on the edge. But since this is going to be more or less the entrance, I think, to the entire factory, I didn't want all of that space taken up with a bunch of sinks. And then I wouldn't really be able to work on it until I figured out where all of the iron was going. I need some sort of, tower or elevator where I'm going to be able to put a whole bunch of lifts that'll be able to move a whole bunch of the ingots going from this bottom floor up to the higher floors, and then bring the goods from the higher floors down to this floor so that I can input them into my storage, which is going to be right here. And I would probably have had enough space because that was the original plan for that huge section over there where the train belt bus is getting plugged in, and I could create a tower for stuff there. And I am going to do that. But since I'm making a huge factory, I decided why not just do two? Because that would make things so much easier. So what I'm going to do is have this tower going up on this side is going to deal with all of the products that are coming down and then running into storage, because this section is nice and close. And then the very far end is where I'm going to send all of my ingots, and that's where things are going to go up to other floors. So if I can keep things kind of going in one direction, it'll make life just so much easier than if you have things trying to go up and down in the same tower. I've done it before, and it can get really messy really quickly. And I'd like to avoid that if I can. So instead, these are just going to go down quite a journey. To 16 awesome sinks that I have set up kind of in this staggered way so that I could get hopefully as many in here as I could. I wanted to put them all on one side because in the next video I'm going to take care of the copper ingots, the caterium ingots, and dealing with the rock quartz. And so those, since those are all on kind of this side of the factory, I'd like those to run down this path right here, and then that way I can leave sinks on this side for all of the other products. Alright, this is ridiculous and I love it. And this is what downstairs ended up looking like. Oh boy. The copper and the caterium are just being sent right down below, that way I can send them over here and then deal with them, kind of avoiding all of this mess. So like I showed, I've got the 3/8 and 5/8 here, doing another 3/8 and 5/8, and then also using the 2/5 and 3/5. That left me with 180 spare for both of these two splits. So that total of 360 is just being sent down below to a sink. This spare 120 went in a different direction. And this is what this madness ended up looking like. Really not that bad. Over here I just needed to use another 2/5 and 3/5 blueprint. And this is all of the remaining limestone I have in the Newton Desert right now. 180. The load balancing on this side wasn't too bad. I just needed to split up another set of 300 belts for the limestone, so the 2/5 and 3/5 worked out great. And then from this belt bus, I actually really only had 2 pure limestone, and then I think at that time I only needed 1 more 300 belt of the iron, so a whole bunch of this is still free. But so far that's what we've got downstairs. It's not too bad. Organized chaos. Alright, it's just about that time. So I am just going to turn it all on with one priority power switch, but let me show you how I set this up. If we come over to one of the entrances to the belt buses, you can see this just kind of random priority power switch. So here is delete me one. So this is how I can get everything to turn on all at once. For each of these belt buses that I'm currently not using anything for, I threw one of these in there, and then I connected all of the iron and limestone, and I have all of those miners on and waiting. Any of the copper or caterium or coal nodes, I have the miners switched to standby, so that those won't turn on now and then just sit there. And this way I can just get everything turned on all at once, which I think is fun. Once I get everything up and running, all I need to do is just connect this to this, and then I can just delete the priority power switch and delete this foundation, and we're good to go. Alright, so back in the factory, let's go ahead and get it all started. So all we need to do, I had to set up a few of these to get this to all work, but I think it's worth it. So let's get the stopwatch going. Alright, that far right back limestone belt is the last one. That's the one that's coming the farthest. So now that that's full, we should get this thing all up and running pretty quickly. It looks like we've got solid green lights. So let's go check these last ones over here and make sure, because I think those would be the last ones connected to that limestone. Looks like it's getting enough limestone now. It's a good thing I have a helmet on. Look at all that smoke that I'm leaving inside my giant hotbox factory. Ah, I love to see it. Well, let's go take a look at the sinks. Ah, the steady flow of progress. This is a good start, but obviously not where it ends. We've got to turn these into a whole bunch of different things. But first, I need to make quite a few more things on this floor. I wish the glass wasn't as reflective, especially when you're inside. I really don't want to see the clouds while I'm inside. I wish I could see through it and see my ingots moving a little bit more clear. I think that's my one complaint with glass in this game, is that even when you're indoors, you get the reflection of the sky, no matter how many layers of foundations are above you. I really hope one day we get that fixed, because I think that would make this floor look even cooler. Well, this is 4,800 iron ingots per minute, and that is mission complete. So like I mentioned before, in the next video, I am going to be setting up refineries for copper ingots, caterium ingots, and doing some of the quartz. That should give me most of the resources I need to add my second floor, and then I can finally start making things like iron plates again. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.